So obviously fixed price contracts are more should be favorable, to the products which are standardized, where specifications are more or less uh, frozen, known, right? And where there is a less chance of prices to increase, or we can say prices to fluctuate. Okay, those kind of products, are the best candidates for fixed price contracts, right? However, very complex contracts, the cost type contracts, where there are high chances of schedule risk, technology risk, or any market risks, so there are very high chances, there we need to encourage cost type contracts. Okay, so these are this one. And what are the other details about this fixed price and cost type contracts? We will quickly go through them. Fixed price contracts can be the firm fixed price, which we have just seen. The fixed price contracts can come up with fixed price with economic price adjustment, right? When we say economic price adjustment, so even if it is firm fixed price, there can be little adjustment possible to incorporate the economic contingencies, for example labor or market conditions, right? There can be a clauses like price escalator or de-escalator clauses. One can always set, the indices, one can set inflation, as a reference, right? If this goes beyond this one, right, we would increase the price according to the change in price by a certain index, right? This is more prevalent in metals and construction services, right? One can have set benchmark to some index, right, some exchange, which is globally accepted, or nationwide accepted. Refer to suitable price adjustment clauses, right? So that we can have suitable, fair and reasonable price can be negotiated for initial periods. So this is more common. We know that if we can anticipate, that these prices are dependent on this economic conditions, they would definitely escalate or it will de-escalate, so we can suitably include this thing in the contracts, right? So when we talk about fixed price contract, there can be another variant, fixed price redetermination. In this, here also we have fixed price for initial contract period, but we can specify that we can redetermine the price maybe at stated period. If the contract is for 1 year, we can say that probably after 6 months the stated period, right? So maybe after 6 months we would revisit, right? If we would revisit during the contract period, we call it as fixed price determination prospective. But if we have to negotiate after the contract completion, it is called FPR retroactive, right? So mostly, if this is a short duration project, right? So during the project we don't have any provision, then we say FPR retroactive for short duration project. But this has to be given in the clauses that after which specified time period, again very similar, to what extent one can revisit the price, right? Fair and reasonable price can be negotiated for initial periods, right? But for short performance period, one can go for FPR retroactive. Okay, so these are certain arrangements companies can offer in their contracts as long as fixed price contracts are concerned. And when it comes to cost type arrangements, right, as we have seen that, so cost maybe fee is for specified scope of work, right? So there can be fixed fee and all costs beyond the fee, as I've already mentioned, the basic cost type contract, right? So supplier has no incentive to control cost, right? That is a little on downside of this cost contracts. So supplier would might become little lethargic on putting efforts in reducing cost, right? So the total liability limit has to be established, right? So you can see here that if this is the one, if supplier is genuinely incurring more cost, right, in that case the uh, then it is little bit unhappy situation for the supplier. So the cost contracts can be like, the very basic cost plus fixed fee. There can be cost plus award fee, right? So definitely cost would be we would be covered, but on top of that, there can be different award fees. So it was pioneered by NASA, right? So as we have said, NASA, so this such cost plus award fee contracts are mostly applicable for complex and hardware problems, products, or for professional services, right? Like complex hardware, like NASA, the space projects, like they face. So when we talk about professional services, so this contracts are also applicable because most of the professional services, we have non-quantitative, maybe intangible aspects also, like about the performance. So the supplier's performance is mostly actually evaluated based on subjective measures. Okay, so for example, software developed, as I've mentioned you, it's very difficult to put a quantitative measure, to set the price. For example, services like landscaping, janitorial, housekeeping, it is very difficult, like to have a quantitative aspect given to that. But supplier and buyer, they can decide on the award money. So buyer proposes the reward to supplier, which is done on periodic basis, right? So it is subjective. If buyer thinks that supplier has put more effort in some specified period, is given, like more reward, so based on the subjective evaluations. Okay, there can be cost without fees, like many government organization, institutes, universities like IIT, they are not for profit organizations, they do research, they do get funding from government, to work on various projects, like where they don't earn profit, they don't get any incentive, but the cost is covered, like what are the overheads, like what are the cost of material used for any research project, so this is cost without fee, right? It is just the cost which is incurred, that's all. So another is cost sharing, like many advanced technologies or research between supplier buyer, they agreed upon, like sharing the cost, mostly 50-50 cost. The strategic items in our Karaljic framework, most of those items, they get into such kind of arrangements called cost sharing. So there is because these days we are working more on services, like maintenance, repairs, like there, so these are also very important contracts. So parties agrees on a fixed rate per labor hour, right, which includes overheads and profits. They also charge, if some material supplied at the cost, right? For example, if for example these days, if washing machine goes off, right, or maybe in an office Xerox machine is not working, or any other AC, air condition, or any other machine goes off, like then so how this time and material, like because here we are actually talking about the hours spent by the service person, right? That means there is a direct labor cost, that's why so we have to actually get the contract based on the time spent by the service person, right? To rectify the problem. So we generally say the direct labor cost per hour is 200, and we have to spend overhead. So overhead, if that is also 100%, so that means the total cost is 400, right? And definitely the companies want to earn profit on top of that. Let's say 10% of profit, then this, the billing rate will become 440 per hour. So now you see that in our homes also, people come for servicing. That very similar model is, like uh, done. So here, this is a cost per hour, like but we know that this is the billing rate 440 per hour. So if the if the repair person will take 2 days, to repair the things, so obviously it will be 2 into 440, right? But if the repair person would find that there is some part which has to be changed, and if this part will come, let's say, some 500 rupees, then this material cost is to be added. Many a times, we have seen that the mechanic would come, would check, would say that this part has to be replaced, I would bring that, but this will be an added cost to you. So this will become the billing amount. So this is how time and material will be there. So this is what, whole gamut of, this thing. And there are letter contracts. These are the kind of emergency contracts, like, which has to be initiated immediately, right? And the settlements are done later, but the ranges of settlement are decided upfront, right? But here are the emergency, probably like in COVID-19, for the drug discovery, or this thing, probably sanctions are given immediately, and they were compensated maybe little later, right, for the cost, and for the cost the suppliers would incur. So this is the letter contract, right, which have to be done immediately. So this is a whole gamut of the contracts, the pricing mechanisms which are done, right? So far, we have seen, the two extreme of contracts, where one party would be incurring more risk over other, right? And we are not sure that, even after providing, giving good price, whether it is justifiable to the effort put by the supplier, or it might be other way around. If genuinely supplier is incurring more cost, then for incurring more cost, giving the small amount of fee is justifiable or not. So these are the questions, like, which we would like to address by having different kind of contracts. Okay, we will deal that. Hello everyone. um, let's continue with our session on supply contracts. uh, in supply contracts, we have seen that there are commonly two types of contracts. One is firm fixed contract and another is cost based contracts. We have also seen that in this type of contracts, there are issues of, like, risk taken by one entity. So one entity means one of the party in the contract has to bear more risk over the other party. So in that situation, what would be the right type of contracts, right? So one way out to solve this problem is by offering incentive arrangement, or we can say incentive related contracts, or we can say providing the right compensation to the entity putting more effort. So, or we can say providing compensation in the form of incentives or rewards, or we can share the risk of, one entity, or one entity can share risk of other entity. So such kind of arrangements are called incentive based contracts. Okay, so these incentives arrangement, so we will solve two examples today to just get familiar with how companies can come up with incentive arrangements. One is fixed price incentive contract, another is cost plus incentive fee contract. So with this, we can have some mechanism where the uh, the the supplier would be rewarded, right, to some extent for their cost efforts, right. So why we need incentive arrangements, right? So as we have told, the risk is not shared, but it is the one entity who is taking too many risks. So what are the aims? Why we need incentive arrangements here? We want to motivate the supplier to improve the performance, and not only motivate, to reward the supplier based on the outcomes, like if they can hold on the cost, they can hold on the schedule, have a good hold on doing the work in the specified schedule, right, or any other developments. Okay, so when we talk about incentive arrangement, mostly supplier and buyer, they agreed on something called target cost, target profit, and sharing arrangement. These are the very important elements of any incentive contract, because they have to agreed on, right. This is the target cost, so that we can they can measure the performance, how supplier is deviating from the target cost, right. So and so is the target profit, right. This is the target which buyer would like to, like supplier to keep, right. And what is the sharing arrangement? So we will see that how these three elements will be used in developing two types of incentive arrangement. So the target cost, when we say, this is the outcome which is most likely outcome for the effort involved and acceptable by both buyer and supplier. This is the probability of supplier's final cost being very close to the target cost, right. And definitely the effort should be to make it as lower as possible, that is beyond target. So the effort would always be, like, if supplier can even put effort to reduce the cost below target cost. So this is but there is always an uncertainty, like there's an equal chance of going above or below the target. Now how this will be compensated to the supplier differently using two contracts, that we will see. And the target profit amount, that is considered fair and reasonable based on all relevant facts, right. So profit target means, it would, like, if this is the target cost, what should be the fair and reasonable profits, right. And sharing arrangement, right. Sharing arrangement means how to allocate cost above and below target, right. What should be my sharing arrangement? Means how much, cost, either cost or rewards to be given to the supplier if supplier would uh, go beyond the cost target, means incur more cost, or do the project or come up with a product at higher cost, or it would, if it would be able to achieve the cost below targets, right. How this cost responsibility would be shared among supplier and buyer? This should reflect the cost risk involved, right, as evidenced by magnitude of potential increases or decreases for the specific efforts. So through an assessment of possible cost outcomes, right? Because when supplier and buyer both would agree, both would discuss, both expertise will be there, to arrive at, what how the magnitude be established through an assessment of possible cost outcomes, or based on varying circumstances the supplier might face during the contract performance, right? Again, there is a due deliberation done, on due diligence done to arrive at, what might be possible outcomes, and then how to arrive at, the target cost and profit, so that, sharing arrangements can be devised, right? So you see here, generally if, supplier and buyer would agree on, if this is the cost structure, right, and if this is the x-axis is the cost and y-axis is the profit, so the supplier and buyer, they can agree on this point. This will be the target cost, means, if we will target to incur this cost, what would be the target profit against that. Okay, so this is, let's do it clearly. So if this is the target, yeah, so this is the point to write and right. So this is how, they will have. And what is the sharing arrangement? If this is the agreed upon target cost, right? So if this is a, if supplier would be able to achieve this target cost, right? What should be the ideally the performance, right? The profit of the for the supplier. But what if supplier will keep on putting effort this side in reducing the cost? You see here, if we will go this way in the curve, the cost is, right, the cost is coming down, means if supplier will put effort in reducing the cost, so ideally the profit should increase for the supplier, right? So that means here we have to devise some kind of sharing arrangement to compensate. That's why we say compensation arrangements, like, for the effort. Okay, so now this is the intention behind incentive contracts. Now how this is done? So we generally, the terminology used here is that, uh, you see here, best case, you please remember that best case, most optimistic cost point, and this will be the best case, right? So if most optimistic cost point is the point for the cost, the respective point for the profit will be the most optimistic profit, right? And the worst case is the other way around, pessimistic cost and the profit against is that. The magnitude of potential cost decreases target point minus most optimistic cost, and, potential cost increase is the target point minus MPC. So this will be negative, right? Or if you want to work on magnitude, it can be other way around, right? So this is what we started with, correct? This is the cost, right? This is the target point, we said that, but we are saying, like, this is the most optimistic cost. Probably supplier would say that this is my optimistic, I can actually produce a product at this cost also. So if this is the most optimistic cost this side, then the respective profit will be the MO, most optimistic profit. Similar case applies here. The most pessimistic cost means here, if the pessimistic cost will be 1200, that means the pessimistic profits, ideally if we will see this curve, then supplier will not get anything, right? So if this is the case, how one can determine. So this is very flexible, like, many people can have, let's take an example. If the target cost is 1000, the target profit for supplier will be 80. Now the price, the target price will be 1080. But if, the supplier will be able to uh, achieve this MOC, right? Right, MOC at 800, right, most optimistic cost, then what we are saying, this sharing arrangement says that the in if, if it will go in this side of curve, by reducing the cost, it can be given profit, the target profit of 80, but the sharing arrangement, the 20% of, right? So 20% of the cost savings from the target, that means 100 minus 8,000 minus 800, the savings in the cost, the 20% of the cost savings will be rewarded, right, to the supplier. So the price will be, right, if this is the 800 is the most optimistic cost, so we will add the reward of 120, which has been calculated using this sharing arrangement. So this is 800 plus 120, this will be the price, the price which will be charged by the supplier to the buyer. But if it is the most pessimistic cost, if at the end of the product we can say that if this will occur in the most pessimistic cost here 1200, then there won't be any profit, so there will be a ceiling price, right, of 1200. So this is the ceiling price 1200. The supplier will not get any incentive at all. Okay, so this is the fixed, like this 20% is the fixed thing, that's why there's a fixed price incentive fee. So this is the one arrangement. Now we see that it actually helps in compensation, like if there would be effort, like that effort should be rewarded, right? Very similar to this framework, this model, we have another incentive, right? So if you want to see how all these calculations are done, right? So you can see here the final price is supplier cost plus profit, and the profit is measured as, like the share, the sharing, 80-20 sharing gives means 20% of the savings from the cost, like most optimistic cost and the target cost. This saving to under 20% of sharing would be added to the most optimistic cost, right, to incentivize the supplier for the effort, right? So this is how one can determine, right? So we have seen in this incentive arrangement, the supplier's profit will be adjusted to reflect the performance in the cost area. If supplier incurred cost above target, profit will be decreased by supplier's share of the cost above target cost up to ceiling price. That's what we have seen. Or it is other way around, if cost below target, supplier would get its share of profit, right? But it is fixed, the 20% is fixed. So that's why this is called the fixed price incentive fee, right? And what is the other type in the incentive arrangement or compensation arrangement we have seen is the cost plus incentive fee, right? So now do we mean by cost plus incentive fee? How this will work is that we will use most of the terminology as same, right? But when we will have cost plus incentive fee, means we are trying to combine incentive arrangement with the cost plus fixed fee, right, model, and incentive is applied over part of the range of cost outcomes, right? So now you are familiar with most of the terms. Now the major differences from the previous curves was that, see, it is never touches to zero, right? Okay, you see here, this is one, and you see here the sharing arrangements are changing, right? See, the slopes of this is changing, rather than having a straight one line here as in the previous fixed fee. Now it is like cost plus incentive fee. What does this mean? The target cost is 100, and suppose if the target profit is 70, so the most optimistic cost is 800, right? And most optimistic profit is fixed fee. So this is the fixed fee, like on top of the cost would be given. So if most optimistic cost is 800, right? So the fixed fee is like 120, right? This is given. If the most pessimistic cost is 400, now here it is not touching here as against the previous thing, because something has been done. This is pessimistic cost, but there is a fixed fee here given for over and above the cost. There will be fixed fee. So fixed fee will be depending on the cost effort. If the cost effort will be in the most optimistic manner, then it is 120. However, it reduces, right? It reduces, but it is not zero as in the previous case. Now, sharing above target, there can be incentives can be different. Sharing above target is 75-25. If this effort is there, in the cost reduction, then there is a high chance, like, good amount would be shared. However, here also, from the pessimistic, case, this will come down. Okay, so this sharing arrangement will come down to 12.5. Now, how we can compute here? Suppose final cost is 700. So 700, you see here, 700 falls here, right? Right. So what are the final cost is 700. This is all we know. Target cost is 100. Most opportunity case target profit here it is 70, unlike 80 in the previous case. Most optimistic cost is 800 and most pessimistic cost is 1400. Against that, against the respective most optimistic case, profit is 120 and 20. This is the fixed fee. That means minimum fee is 20. Like the supplier, if would reach beyond pessimistic case, would always get some fixed fee called 20, right? So now you see that suppose final cost comes down to 700. So that means it is lying in this range, right? So that means cost savings from the target will be 1002. So this is the cost savings. So if if it is this range, right, definitely it should fall in this range. But the 75-25 sharing arrangement comes here because beyond that there is a fixed fee of 120. Okay, so this we have set, right? So this is what. So supplier shares of saving is 75, right? Because 300 into 25, but computed fee, saving fee plus target fee 75 plus 70, the target profit which they would get is 145. Ideally it should be 145, right, if we will follow this sharing arrangement. But there is a fixed fee. Beyond that, there is a not it cannot go beyond 120. So it will earn 120 as an incentive. Now what would be the price? The cost incurred is 700, and plus supplier will be given fixed fee of 120. That means 820 is the price which the supplier will charge to the customer. Okay, so there can be variety of this one. You can try different versions. What if, like, the cost was here 1200? In that case, what would be the sharing arrangement? So 1200 minus 1000, so sharing below target, that would be deducted, right? So 12.5% of 1200 minus 1000, that money would be deducted from 1200, plus it would be given fixed fee of 20. Okay, so the cost incurred by the supplier, right, minus your this sharing arrangement, and plus 20 as a fixed fee in this no, after beyond this it will be 20, but here till here it will be 12.5% deduction will happen. So this is the arrangement they have. So if cost will happen in this zone, correct? So the difference between the actual cost and the target cost, the 12.5% of that will be shared with the supplier. But when it will come to this point, beyond that point, nothing will be shared with the supplier, but supplier will be given the cost incurred, any cost incurred beyond that, plus 20 as a fixed fee. So now you see here, this is cost plus incentive fee. So they are actually somehow the variants of firm fixed price and cost plus incentive fee uh, price contracts. But these are very useful, like, you can see that, the first thing, like, when both parties would agree to some target cost and profit, both parties expertise will come together, to actually anticipate, to estimate what can be the target. And they would agree on sharing arrangements, right? So there can be two methods of sharing. It can be fixed, or it can be cost plus incentive fee, right? And by using this, the companies can actually develop many other variants also. Like, the sharing arrangements can vary depending on the effort, depending on the project, depending on the complexity of a product, keeping in mind the schedule risks, or delivery related risk. So all those things, can be discussed, or discussed with the between the parties to arrive at various contracts. So this is all about, the supply contracts, which happen among the supply chain entities. These are very important to be agreed upon, before writing the contract. Such things should go on the contracts. This all formulas, the sharing arrangements, everything should go in the schedule of the contract, then only pricing mechanisms should be firmed up in a contract. So this is all about supply contracts. Thank you.